we'll call a meeting to order this evening, and let's see, we do need to invocation and pledge, right? Let's start. Our Father in heaven, we thank Thee for this evening and for the chance we have to meet together for this Airport Advisory workshop. I'm grateful for the city of Leesburg and for Thy hand and blessings here. We ask that we'll have a good meeting this evening and had a good discussion about the things that we can do to better the airport and to serve the city and to make it better. And say these things in Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right. City manager, it's all yours.
I put an opening comment in there. I know through Tracy and Michael Rankin, the Airport Advisory Board had one of the joint sessions just to kind of have some dialogue with the City Commission, goals, objectives, making sure everybody was on the same page. So I thought it was important just to issue, well, I don't want to issue statements, the wrong thing to say, but to kind of give a brief description of the goals that I have seen or interpret that the Commission has placed on me since my tenure here. And the Airport Board, I think, these are all new faces for the most part on the Airport Board since I've been here. And essentially, I think upon my hiring, which was December 2013, so a little over 3 years and 4 months ago, not that I'm counting.
2 days, 9 hours, and 57 minutes.
Well, today is what? Today's the 11th, so not quite 4 months on the button. But in any case, I think there was a drive there from the Commission to want to use the airport as an economic development engine. Towards that degree, I think that we've learned on a staff level. It only took us a couple of times to get yelled at, but we've learned that the things I think the Commission, if I can speak on your behalf, has stressed is fair market value, making sure we're getting the highest and best dollar for the property use, that when leases have expired, that we're renewing those leases in terms that are more favorable now for the city and not so much for the tenant, because most of those leases that we've gone through here, with an exception of a few, we've sought either a more market deal or assumption of the asset, which is what the lease originally stated. I think that's happened on a couple cases. I think the one that I recall the most is the T hangars, that the city ultimately, we couldn't strike a deal on terms for the lease, and so the city did reacquire those T hangars. And all in all, I think that was a good deal for the city. That was the term of the lease, and I think that brought in about $40,000 a year more in revenue for the airport. And then I think the biggest thing there, also on the economic development side, and to that degree, I think the deal with Whip Air was one of the first ones that we did. Coming on board as your city manager, the using the funds to build the seaplane ramp is critical as far as job creation. At that time, Whip Air was seen as I think that the number that we did, the quid pro quo, was seaplane ramp for 50 jobs, which at the time was pretty important. And we're a couple of weeks away now from opening bids on that project, and that fits hand in hand with what Tavares has done. And so as far as servicing general aviation aircraft and outfitting them for floats, and then that works hand in hand with kind of the commercial aspects that Tavares does. So I think that was well received. But then I think the bottom line is the Commission's been very an advocate of using the airport for economic development engine, with those examples being given. The resources out there are extremely limited as far as vacant land, what's left. To that regard, there's, off the top of my head, 3 or 4, maybe 5 parcels along 441. And 441 is really the revenue engine for the airport. Those parcels are the money makers for their non-aviation, but they're the commercial parcels that bring in the lion's share of airport revenue. And there's 3 or 4 other places that we can have such deals. One was the old lawnmower business, you know, where we spent about 20 grand to tear that down so that we could open up and have frontage on that. And recently we've had petitions for, I can't remember the 2 petitions we've had. One was from Brainerd, one was from, what was the other company you just wrote, Tracy? CCI, similar interest on parcels. And my directive, which I think is rooted in the commission's directive, has been, we want highest and best dollar for that. And generally, airside stuff has been 15 cents. 441 stuff, you know, we're hoping for somewhere upwards of a buck per square foot. So I think number 1 priority is using the airport for economic development, and that means what will return the best in land value and what will create the most jobs. That's been my directive. Every time I think I've come to the airport board, I've expressed those sentiments, and so I thought it was important to have that introduction briefing, and then just kind of have a conversation between the board and the commission on what the goals and objectives were, and making sure everybody's on the same page.
Is there any report from the?
I just had a couple of questions I wanted to throw in. I know we're getting ready to do the master plan update, which sets the tone for the airport for the next 10, 15 years. Where do each of you feel the airport should go, and how do you feel? What direction do you see the airport going in for the master plan?
Well, I don't think I feel comfortable speaking about the master plan until we as a commission sit down and put our ideas and thoughts together. I think for us right now, just to throw out our individual ideas, you know, is for me, I'm not ready to do that. That's something we like to do as a commission in a workshop setting specifically designed for that.
Yeah.
And I think Al spoke to pretty much.
Yeah,
what,
and I think where we're going to head, you know, Tracy's obviously going to get input from the Airport Advisory Board on the master plan. Again, I think we need to preserve our commercial properties for highest return on that dollar, and then the airport master plan is always going to work out whatever improvements we need to do, and whether we can get them done or not. Runway overlays, taxiway improvements, you know, those hard surface things. So we need to look at that. Right now, the airport financially, it's doing okay, but most of those dollars are going to be tied up in the seaplane ramp. And at that, there's still, you know, about $1 million loan that the commission approved. I think you guys approved that in final form, or pretty close to it. Borrowing from, I think we're borrowing from Storm Solid Waste. So I think Tracy put together $1.5 million, $1.7 million, plus another $1 million needed to do that project. So as far as those resources right now, they're tied up in a seaplane ramp, which I think the commission, as well as the Airport Advisory Board, thought was primary project. And so to move on there in the master plan, I think we need to look at the taxiways. I think we need to go back and look at the runway realignment or taxiway realignment. Tracy, you got any other concepts in that? I think we'll give a, you know, maybe long-term look at the development of the south side of the airport, what we can do to punch through to 441 and those type of things. Tracy, do you want to add?
Yeah, you want me to approach you? So the master plan, which is like really in the very initial stages, it goes through multiple steps. And the first step is just taking the inventory of what's existing right now. At each stage, it has to be reviewed by the FAA. The next step is going to be the forecast. The forecast is done by the FAA. They actually tell you what they feel the numbers are going to grow to as far as our airport. Once we know what the forecast is and how much growth there's going to be, then that's when, you know, the engineers will look at, okay, what land is available, where can the airport grow based on what the FAA thinks our needs are. And at that point, they would sit down with the commission. We'll have a workshop with the engineers, and so that they can see what your vision is, what your goals are, and then they'll incorporate all of that in, and we'll propose to the FAA what we feel like we want to do. They'll meet with the advisory board. They'll meet with tenants. You know, it's a process that they'll get a lot of input, and so the direction will be what you all collectively
discuss and
But
move forward with
as
that.
far as
So,
projects,
as far as projects, both the FAA and the DOT organizations have, there's actually a list out there that certain things hold certain priorities. The FAA clearly has so many airports around the states that they want to see maintained and continue, to be in good condition. So they're less likely to fund something like new construction because they want to see everything existing being cared for long-term. DOT, on the other hand, is more likely and has traditionally funded new construction projects. However, if they see a need for pavement rehab or something that is more a safety concern, like clearing more of the safety area and some of the trees and stuff around the lakes, then that could trump a new construction project. That doesn't mean that it's impossible, and it doesn't mean that they won't. In any given year, they may fund multiple projects. But it's all about what our needs are and what comes first in their eyes.
Is there some type of 5-year plan? I mean, it's nice that the FAA and DOT are telling you what they'll do, but what about we would like to do this and to keep in touch with them to see what kind of funding is available?
Mm-hmm.
If we keep waiting for these organizations to come to us, we never will get things done.
Right, well, I meet with them on a regular basis, sometimes quarterly, but we have like annual gaming meetings where I get together with both organizations at the same time, because a lot of times they'll both help fund a project.
Mm-hmm.
The master plan, the FAA is funding 90% of it, DOT is picking up 8% of the remains, and we're spending 2% of current revenue. So they'll often come together and, fund a project together. We do have a big wish list. Our wish list is the CIP, the 10-year CIP, which is actually 20, but I think we review 10 years at the budget
with the
season.
acronyms, let's read out the acronyms, because all these commissioners don't understand
Okay,
those
so the
acronyms.
capital improvement plan that we present during the budget season that I've put together mirrors exactly what the FAA database has. Those projects, when I acquired them, the wish list was really long. I've since it's still big because you're supposed to throw everything at it. Because if it's not on there, it doesn't even have a chance of getting funded. It has to be in the program.
hey, I hate to interrupt you, Tracy. Give us some of the examples of the projects that are on the wish list. Some of the stuff that we had talked about was the realignment of taxiway, A.
Yeah.
Then expansion of the tarmacs was on there. Recreation or changing of the blast fence. What were some of the other specific projects as a sampling?
Okay.
I can't remember them all.
And as
Okay.
along those lines, if we can get a list of what projects you've put on your list and whatnot, just to keep us informed of what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. There's some boring safety issues in there, like clearing, which is an expense because although we've cleared in the past, we mean like clearing and filling, and now it's sodded, it's no longer going to grow back up and be an obstruction. So that's a high priority. I've moved T-hangers up on the list because I hear that from a lot of directions. The Wilco Drive possibilities of having that be our primary entrance, that's on the list. The fire department would like to see clearing at the end of runway 3 into Lake Harris. And then it went as far as to say I think there was a rescue boat on the wish list.
You can take that off.
There were more corporate hangars. There's 2 instances where I've put requested funding for land to purchase more
Do
land.
we have administrative facility on there? Did we
I
get
took
back
it
to
off.
terminal?
No, I
You had
took
asked
that
about
off.
that. So this is kind of, if that is somewhere where we want to go as far as, trying to lure in commercial flights, that's, we've got some stuff to put on the wish list. I don't recommend that, by the way. I think that's a huge expense. and then you're just gonna be at the mercy of whether the economy and the environment will return that. And, you know, you may have a huge multi-million-dollar investment, and for a month, we might have Blue Star Airlines coming in, and then a month later, they're gonna say, we don't have it anyway. So I
If
think that's.
if I was to do a dream list, if that was a situation that was conducive to doing it, that may be the answer right there. But I think you know, having the airport and the growth that's happening around Leesburg, particularly with the villages and people traveling from the villages, that from what I understand, talking with retired pilots in the industry, that that competition for that level of aircraft is these 35, 40 seat planes. And what they're doing is they're competing with what it costs to take a van from the villages to Orlando, and that's what they're competing with. So they look at it, and does anybody know what it costs to take a van from the villages to what that ride costs? Is it $100 or whatever?
$27.
How much?
27.
Oh my gosh, well, they can't compete with that. So, but anyway, that's what they look at is their value to competing with, you know, rather than somebody driving from the villages to Orlando to get an airplane closer to them, where they would fly a commuter plane to out. Not heard. I saw a nod back there, so maybe that generally that's kind of how that works. But if it does, if it doesn't, it doesn't. But it was just an idea of a way that we can do that and add some more attraction to Leesburg.
But without the list of what's actually being planned and looked at, we can't even assume that we can come up with our own wish list.
And that was what kind of answered your question. I don't have anything specific other than that, which is a dream, probably a too big of a dream of what would happen there at the airport. Other than that specific, I would just say in general that some things that I think, and these are very general, is that, you know, to add, you know, public use, you know, fashion of, you know, air shows or whatever, but something, you know, in a way that the airport could be used to add more quality of life value to being a property owner in Leesburg and having a business in Leesburg. That's pretty, you know, generic of a thing. But I think, you know, the way that we could do that, you know, I think as a board, as tenants out there at the airport, to just feel that you can come to the city and say, we have an idea, just like me saying, hey, why don't we get a commuter airline in here? And you say, well, that's pretty silly. No, that's not going to work. I mean, that's fine. But to feel comfortable enough to say, you know, we've got an idea of something that we think would be good for the airport, good for tenants, and that would be good for the city, to be able to come and voice that, so we can think about it. I mean, that's where, you know, vision and growth in the future comes from. It comes from ideas, and you just throw them out there. So I think, I mean, that's pretty general, but of what I could say today myself is to, you know, how you could help the city and direction there from the airport and the advisory groups.
The property that's over next to the lake, that's all trees and whatnot right now, is there buildable property there?
Are you talking to like the west and south of Lowe's
Yes.
that was recently
Well,
purchased?
Lowe's and also right across the runways going toward the lake.
Yes. Actually, I didn't make multiple of this, but there was one photo that was kind of drawn up. I'll let you guys
Yeah.
pass that around. That's behind
okay.
Lowe's. This line represents the railroad bed.
Right.
So that's
That we know
dry.
there's some buildable there,
Right.
but what about over here?
Over on this quadrant, no.
Is that going to the railroad bed?
Yeah,
That
that's
land-
To the seaplane ramp that way? No, yeah, the seaplane ramp.
You can't build anything the southeast corner. The south side of our primary runway, there's about 17 acres of buildable land.
Okay.
The challenges with that is getting to it successfully off of
Without going across the
441.
runways, right.
And then there would need to be an additional taxi lane on that side. There's zero infrastructure there, water, wastewater, so that would be a really big undertaking. It's there, and it's
Okay,
available, there is
okay.
buildable land, but it comes with some challenges.
Okay.
We have
More likely is the east side, what we're calling east side bylaws.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, you've got College Drive and then Veterans Drive for access. We could branch off of the fire station road.
Okay.
So there's more options over on that side, I think, from what I've learned.
So outside, I'll say one, the property on 441, I think that needs to stay commercial to basically fund the rest of the stuff. So what I'm saying, I would not apply to those parcels with the frontage. For me, I'm not, I think we have a good thing going on at the airport right now, and I am very wary about protecting what we have and making sure that whatever growth we have doesn't come at ruining the good stuff going out there. So, for instance, we had people approached us a while ago. They were talking about doing a flight school for international students, but we're going to leave all their maintenance operations elsewhere. And to me, like, that's not something I want to see at the airport. I don't want to see a bunch of ops without any investment in jobs. And right now we have basically 2 spots that if tomorrow someone came in and said that I wanted to build a commercial hangar for a private aircraft, that's it, without major work. And I think we need to be careful about not boxing ourselves out, because if someone comes in and says, I want to bring 100 jobs somewhere else in Leesburg, but my headquarters are in Kansas and I need a commercial hangar at your airport and you don't have one, or a spot for me to build one, I don't want to get rid of all of our land just to get rid of it, because I think that is a very valuable asset, and it needs to be for the right use. I don't want to turn into a Popka. They're completely built out and it's just a bunch of people storing junk because it's cheap storage space. So I also want to make sure that the uses inside the airport are primarily aviation based. I think that's very important to me, and that could be whether it's a private hangar or a business, but they need to be aviation related. So that's
one of the things you just said. The storage space for junk has recently been changed by the FAA. They're requiring that the hangars go back to airplane use. So the vendors, the garage sale, where they're storing their stuff is not happening.
And I do know all the recent leases that have come through have been specific about aviation use, but
So the FAA is pushing for more aviation use of aviation facilities.
There's accidental storage, but yeah, to put an RV or a boat is clearly frowned upon, but the little area over here that's not being used, that's under the wing, they're okay with something in
that's
there.
not what
But
I
yeah,
was
but
certainly
not, yeah, you're right. No,
At Orlando North, for example, the guys here that store containers worth of stuff for, say, garage sales and flea markets and all that. No, they're having to take those hangars back and use them for airplanes.
that's good.
So if I may comment about the Leesburg Airport, it's my general impression that we have a few key operations happening at the airport. For example, we have a really nice FBO. We have Skybolt, which is a national business for making fasteners. We have a firefighting business, which is a national thing, also maybe international as well. We have a couple of other things that are big for a small airport. So we have a bit of a presence. We also have a location in the center of Florida. So it's kind of a destination where pilots would like to go. Now, my background's Air Force and American Airlines Aviation, so the general aviation, small airplanes, typically they're like boaters. You buy a boat, you hang it in the davits, it gets never used. So the airplane pilots are the same. They buy an airplane, they buy a hangar, it never gets used. So where I'm going with this chain of thought is, you go buy a $100 hamburger. You go fly to another airport and buy a burger and then fly home. Exercise the equipment, the planning, the landing skills, which are perishable. So you exercise the equipment in a small way. So that's another aspect of an airport destination that we could be. And I think one of the important things for using it as a $100 hamburger would be a restaurant, a destination for other small aviation pilots to come to and treat their family to a dinner or lunch.
I can add, just a personal thing on that, not me personally that's done it, but I know of a German gentleman down in Fort Myers that, I don't know if he still does, but he used to fly into the airport here just to go to the Yaha Bakery. So that's why he did that. So just exactly what you're saying, and that was the only reason he stopped.
Can I comment on that though? Because if I'm wrong, I'll be corrected, and the commission will steer me straight. But we're speaking of subtleties. I think the restaurant concept, at least since I've been here, has been talked about for 3 years. I don't see it being a priority for the city commission. I don't see it being a priority for the city commission because if the city or the airport is the one who has to invest in the restaurant, I don't think that that's going to provide the return of when you compare the jobs that we're trying to create to competing in the $100 hamburger market when we've got our friends over there at Tavares who've capitalized on $100 market, with the seaplane capital of the world, with the commercial, with the hamburger commercial atmosphere. Our drive since I've been here has been to be the blue collar worker, okay? Go over and get your $100 hamburger in Tavares and use our airport to put people to work, to get jobs and create industrial tax base. Now, having said that, while I think primarily the restaurant concept hasn't flown, I don't think the city wants to fund it. If it happens, on the other hand, by private investment, and people come forward to want to lease the dirt to build the restaurant, and they invest in that, then I think we'll lease you the dirt. And to that extent, I think the target area that everybody's talked about has been that Wilcox lot, right off Wilco there, right behind Brian's hangar. And if that happens, great. I think it can happen without pushing the envelope. I don't think it has to be a specialty restaurant either. We've had Ruby Tuesdays since they've closed. Look at airport property. We've had, I wish Rankin was here, he could name 3 or 4 different restaurants.
Chili's.
Chili's, Chili's, Ruby's, a couple others have looked at that spot. So I think that's a great concept. But I think it's important to say, because you brought it up, I think it's important to say, I don't think, and I wouldn't advise the commission that restaurant concept be a primary goal, to where we use our resources to do that.
I have to agree with you, Mr. Meyer, that is a B level. The A level was the first thing I talked about, the big businesses.
Yes.
The FBO, the Skypole, the firefighting.
Exactly.
So those are the A entities, and I think the airport's conducive to that sort of an operation. Tourist-wise, that's the B level. I'm not so enthused about that. But when I come into Leesburg Airport, I see it as a small airport, homey, nice, nicely maintained, and the mom and pop airplanes, they're there. Those are nice. So the general atmosphere at Leesburg Airport is good, is very good.
Did you want to say something, Alan?
Well, I want to touch on Mr. Mayor's point about the fly-ins, barbecues. I would like to get more aviation-related public interface, whether it be an air show or a fly-in where you drop beanbag bombs out of the airplane. Just to get more aviation-related people there, get the public out there, do some food trucks with some kind of fly-in.
And I don't want to get adversarial, okay? The city has tried this approach, okay?
Aviation-related?
We did with Aviate, we did with the chamber, okay? And so the same things that we prefaced with trying to get people to the airport, we did it maybe not so aviation-centric, okay? We did it with cars, we were going to do it with shows, it was going to support the airport, it was going to support the chamber, and it was Brainerd who shut it down. And so now with this concept coming back to us, it's the exact same things that Brainerd talked about, that he got involved with the FAA to say we weren't going to do. We can't bring people out in the infield. We can't bring people to the airport. It's unsafe. But now all of a sudden, if it's more aviation centric, it's okay.
And we also can't close runways.
And we also
Can't do
can't,
the
but,
crosswinds.
you know, and we went all through those, we went through those approaches. And now granted, we started it with the chamber approach, and it wasn't aviation centric. It was wings and wheels, right? I think that was Sandy's approach to this thing. We tried to weave in the aviation concepts, but to do an aviation concept, to do a wings and wheel concept, the same things that Brainerd complained about shutting down the airport, you're going to have to do with it aviation. So which is it? Is it you can't have the concept at all, or you can have it, but it's got to be aviation centric? I don't think that matches. I don't think that's reasonable. And when we went through this the second round, the airport advisory board 4-1 said that it was that the wheels and wings was a good concept. And so I think the city's going to support you on that. I think at the end of the day, we've tried to do this. We've tried to do events. We've tried to have people out at the airport, whether it was prefaced through selling cars and supporting the chamber, or whether it was selling through aviation. So I think the response that this commission is going to have back to the airport board on that is be consistent. Be consistent. We tried this. It got poo-pooed by one person at the airport. We came back. Everybody loved it. It still got poo-pooed. And now the airport advisory board is saying, let's try this again. What's it going to be?
Well, you can have a fly-in and stuff like that without shutting down runways.
Can I comment on that? Because people ask me all the time, how come you never have an air show? Well, my thought is, had we done the chamber event, that would have come with like a huge staff that, volunteers and help that Sandy was bringing together. When we have the World War II planes come in, they come with a full staff that, they take admission, they rope off areas, they've got, people at certain areas. The problem with this airport is that we don't really have an area for spectators. Like, how do you, and then we don't have the staff to manage a big crowd. I mean, so if we were to plan something, I'm not against it, but without having staff to facilitate it and make it work, it's kind of hard. Unless we shut a runway.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the commission. That topic is frustrating because, at least from my angle, even fight with my airport director a little bit, who doesn't echo my sentiments on this one completely. I think we need to boast the airport. We need to do air shows. We need to do car shows. We need to live outside the box. We need to not worry about shutting down runways. We need to not worry about staff, because we can make it happen when we have a good event.
Yeah,
But Frank, I don't mean to interrupt you, Bob. I'm sorry, but we need Chuck support. I'm gonna say it flat out. Flat out. I'm not gonna run away. Chuck needs to support the airport. This board has supported Chuck. When this board was telling me to not get 30-year leases anymore, we did it with Chuck. We helped Chuck's business. I think this commission is extremely happy that Brainerd Aviation is at the airport, that he's invested in the airport, that he's built the airport. But Chuck needs to be a member of the airport group. And when we come up with concepts like Wheels and Wings that get shot down by Chuck, only for Alan, you to bring back this concept of doing an airport show, that got, okay, my dander's up. That got my dander up. Because it's completely unreasonable, and it completely worked against everything that this board has told me to do with the airport, to be shut down by Chuck, only to have it brought back up by you today. So I don't mean to shoot the messenger, okay? I don't mean to shoot the messenger, but come on. Well, I mean, I won't say that. I'm sorry, I got on my box.
Yeah,
but
I don't think we
would love to do
I don't think we need to talk about that one anymore.
but-
Other than that, I think we can have shows and Tracy and what she was saying. and I don't think
I
this
think
is
if
just,
we could-
Al
I'm sorry,
talking,
Mayor.
I don't think there's, this is just limited to Leesburg, but I think, in general, Leesburg is gonna support events. And so whether it's that the chamber you can partner up with the chamber, whether it's you partner up with, the partnership or the civic organizations, the Rotaries, the Kiwanis, or whatever, there's opportunities for the airport to put on events, and there's a boatload of people within Leesburg that could help. Now you can step outside of Leesburg too, because it doesn't have to be limited to just Leesburg. This is the only airport, right here in the area. So now you've got Eustis and Mount Dora and wherever that people could come in and help. So I wouldn't get held up on saying we're not going to do an event because we're afraid that we won't be able to have the volunteers to do it. I think there's enough in town that we can make that happen. And I think from just on what Al's saying is that, and address it both ways. I'm not going to turn down an event that would be good for Leesburg because we didn't get to have the Wings and Wheels. If the opportunity comes up again to do Wings and Wheels, I would ask that the airport group of them consider allowing that happen. That's a good way to promote the airport and make it more visible. And I mean, there's thousands of people that have probably never stepped foot on at that airport to see what's there and what kind of opportunities, and to say, well, hey, why don't they do air shows out here? And we'd volunteer for help with some air shows if you would do them. And so it could generate more public interest, I think, and there to, even if it wasn't just about airplanes.
And look, and I don't mean to go back to this because I should stand correct. I need to correct myself, because when we did get the second whack at that, it didn't fall apart because of Brainerd. It started to fall apart because some of the car guys backed out at the last second. But we had two cracks at trying to do an event like that. The first one did fall apart because of Brainerd. The second one, we worked around Brainerd, and that was the 4-1 vote. And then ultimately it didn't happen because the car dealers started pulling out. So
Well,
I got too emotional about that.
All right, let's just keep moving
But
forward on positive things about the airport.
I'm sorry, but
Excuse
We
me,
don't- I don't
Mr.
think we need to
Brainerd.
talk about that
Mr.
anymore.
Brainerd is no longer the head of Brainerd
I-
Helicopter.
I got you.
So there's been a change
I-
of management
I-
and
I- I
everything
think
we need to
else,
stop
and they're
talking.
willing to go ahead and try to do things out at the airport. So let's not
then that's a relief, and I
Keep-
stand corrected.
Okay.
keep picking on what happened here.
Yeah, let's drop Wings and Wheels from now and just move forward. That's
I think
something
if
that
I
passed
may
to figure
interject
out.
something here, please, Commissioner. The airport is specifically, it's a specific airport in a category of airport, and it's not conducive to air shows. And what I mean by that is I used to fly the C5, the U2, the T3 airplanes. I would take to air shows, and they had ramp space in a city environment. And so it was a different kind of venue than we have at Leesburg Airport. That's why I mentioned again, yes, you have Skybolt and Brainerd and the FBO and these commercial entities, and I think you should concentrate in that area because the airport does not have ramp space, and it's not conducive to air shows. The car, if you deal with car dealers, don't get me going on car salesmen, but they're a special breed of cat, and they're out for making.
All right, I'm going to just kind of move things along here a little bit, and let's just focus on the things that we can, some ideas. This was a workshop to talk about, ideas of things with the airport and what vision might be, and to get some, that kind of feedback, not to, set issues or figure out how we're going to do something or why an event can't happen there or why there can't be a commercial airline that come in there, and do this. It's just to kind of hash things out. You're asking for ideas, and that the purpose of your board, your meetings, are to discuss those things in detail, and we may have some discussions in detail later as well about things, I think. But
Real quick before we get going, guys, because I'm not familiar with who represent, my representative is not here, but can you tell me which commissioners you each represent?
Mr. Bowen.
Your mayors.
I have no idea. Mr. Christian, I believe, is my mentor.
Commissioner Elise.
Mine's here. He's always at the meetings, though. Airport advisory.
He is, I've been
He's always there, I would say.
Mine's in Georgia.
But one thing that did come up when I read your meetings a lot is this a lot of discussion on the minimum standards lease space. Would you like to go over what?
Well, I had two things. Can I
Oh,
ask
sorry,
just one
I'm
thing?
sorry.
No, and it may work
You
with
go
that,
ahead.
because what I was gonna say is, so we don't end up with a 5-hour meeting and a 20-minute discussion on every topic that comes up. I mean, you all, from what I understand, requested this meeting, and I don't know if you have a spokesperson, but
I was just wanting to open dialogue between us, so, you know, when we have the meetings, I wanna make sure that us as the board, we're communicating with our commissioners and about what's going on at the airport, so when we vote on it, and it comes to you guys, we back each other up and stuff like that. I just wanted to open dialogue of how do you feel the airport should go, where do you see it going, stuff like that.
well, I think one of the biggest assets that you guys you're missing here is a very simple answer for that on all fronts. Number one, this body meets regularly, and individually we all meet with Al. So that question most of the time can be summed up with Al, because he hears from all 5 of us individually and collectively, and he knows what we tell him, some things we don't say in open session, but he knows what I think, he thinks, so he can tell you, this is where 3 of the 5 guys are leaning, this is the way you need to go. And then second, you know, each one of you are supposed to be the representatives for us, and I would hope that your commissioners are telling you, these are the things that I specifically am sponsoring, pushing for, hoping for, would like to see happen. And so between Al, the airport director, and your commissioner, you really ought to have a pretty good grasp on that without having a big meeting here where we sit down and say, because it's where's the limit, where's the line, where do you stop talking about all the different aspects of it, and we can, you know, we can have a 2-hour meeting or a 6-hour meeting and still not really resolve very much. So, you know, I was hoping that you guys were saying, hey, these are some of the things that we're, as a board, we're struggling with. These are some of the things we'd like clarity on, and we had some kind of idea, more so than let's just sit down for a couple hours and talk about different things.
I have a few things I'd like to, that's toward that ends, and as I said, I represent Mayor Bowman.
Well, if the commission's okay, we'll give you guys a couple minutes and just let you uninterrupted get it out, and then maybe we can address some things.
That'd be great. I've been on the board since January, so I'm a newbie.
Okay.
So coming in, I've made some observations, and I have an airplane at this airport. Took me 3 years to get a hangar. I was on the waiting list for 3 years. And at that time, I had to hangar the airplane in Jacksonville because that's where my business was. So I had a hangar there until I could get a hangar here.
Do you mind if I ask you what your business is?
I'm currently, I just built a new building. I started a new business here in Leesburg about 2 years ago that is a logistics company that moves auto parts.
Okay.
And when I was in Jacksonville, I had a insurance auction company. But what I see here is, you know, having been on a 3-year waiting list for a hangar, that tells me that there's plenty of demand for hangars. Now, I also understand that the demand for prime spots, you know, prime real estate, you need to keep for the big industrial and have that. But there are a couple of lots of land here, and on the map there, number 26 and then out in front of number 17 are 2 areas of land that really no big company is going to come in and take those because they're so far back off of the runway. There's already existing taxiways there. They're right next to the other hangars that I think a deal should be put together. I mean, Tracy at our last meeting told us that there's a waiting list of 70 now. So there's 70 people. And I went out and walked the property, and I think at most on the land that I'm talking about, and that's even if you did not build T-hangars up on lot 21, you could probably put 5 hangars in there, but probably no more than 30 hangars could you put on that land. But with the right deal, you might be able to draw somebody in that's willing to put up the money and willing to, you'd probably have to incorporate the other T hangars that are right there on 20 and 17 to make the deal work so that they're not competing against the city, so that they would just assume those leases But if you could put up enough for another 30 hangars, then all of a sudden you're generating more income. And when you put 30 more airplanes on the property, there's 30 more planes buying fuel. There's 30 more planes getting annuals from the mechanics. I mean, and 30 more planes that need to go to the avionics shop. And it kind of, in my mind, you know, staying away from the prime land and going toward this land, that seems to be, you know, it makes sense to me. Being a businessman, that makes sense. If the cost of doing that, and I'm looking into what the cost would be to build those hangars on that spot, just to see, so I could present something, you know, and see if it's an idea, because I don't even know if it's feasible yet, but that's what I see. There's a demand, and normally when you fill the demand, you can make money. I mean, that's been my business. You know, there is a demand, and we've got it sitting there. It's been there for years, because I was part of it. So I know it's there, and it's stayed there, and it's grown. It's just that we've got this, and that land's not doing any of us any good sitting right there when it could be producing revenue.
I don't know that you could fit on either of those a two-sided
Let's just run
entry
through these
building.
ideas, Tracy. Let's let them get.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I've had a contractor out there that built the other two T hangars, and he's quite sure that you
Okay,
can.
okay.
So, the second thing that I talked about, when you build these hangars and you have more revenue that's produced by increased need in fuel and mechanics and avionics. If a new mechanic wanted to come in to the airport, they would be prohibited at this point because of the minimum standards that are in place. And they would have to go with a variance. And I thank Mr. Minner for coming last week, because I wanted to see what the chances are that if somebody came in, that you would approve a variance for somebody, and he says we don't want the minimum standards to be where we have to prove a variance. And I understand that, and I agree with that. But for a mechanic, an additional mechanic to come on the property now, according to our minimum standards, they've got to have 2 acres. And hangar space, which they ought to have hangar space if they're going to do, but hangar space in 2 acres, there's no place you could put that. So basically it's impossible for another mechanic to come on. Now that's good for the existing guys, but you know, any type of small business, any type, even if it's not a mechanic, even if it's some other aviation related, nobody could, there's not 2 acres available to put somebody in there. So it's, in my mind, it's a block, unless you want to go with a variance, which I don't really think that it ought to be that way. But those are the 2 things that I've seen in my short tenure, and I've given you my 2 cents, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, Steve?
Again, commercial. I think that the buildings that if you build anything on the airport, there needs to be a Skybolt, White Bear kind of operation, so that it's a nationally known organization. They fly the airplanes in for parts, and we ship out the parts, and it provides jobs, manufacturing jobs. I don't know what the long-term proposal was from White Bear, but 50, 100, I don't know. But that's a float plane business, you know, plane float business is a huge thing for all of aviation. And for them to come down to this airport is a big thing. You know, Tavares has their own niche. They're America's seaplane city, which, okay, but I'm sorry, but it's BS. They're not America's seaplane city. Seaplanes are in Alaska and up north, and you know there aren't very many seaplanes in Tavares. But they capitalize on that, and that's okay. In 30 seconds, I'll say, 13 years ago, when my wife and I brought the first Dragon Boat Festival to Florida, that was a hard sell. In Tavares, we were in the Tavares Rotary Club, and I went to the Tavares Town Council, and I said, you have what cities dream about having, a venue for dragon boats, or for watercrafts, or anything. I only had was an embarrassment of a boat ramp. And I said, hey, we want to bring a festival to Florida. We took it to Hickory Point, and they saw what it was, okay. And then that's what started the downtown Tavares development. So now we have, wow, America's Seaplane City. So they have a venue for that.
But for a Leesburg Airport, let's get back to that. I think that that facility is not the same as downtown Tiberias. It's its own entity conducive to commercial operations, to having buildings to manufacture things, to create jobs for manufacturing. People fly in and see that. That's the A level, in my thinking, for Leesburg Airport.
Okay, thank you.
To touch on what Bo said about the minimum standards, we're working with Al and Tracy on that. We'll be talking about it on Thursday again. Just to, the 2-acre minimum. If the city takes back a piece of property, they can't release it because no one coming in would meet the minimum standards. So we're working with Al on that issues. I just see the airport as I've lived here my entire life. I've worked at the airport now 10+ years. It's home to me. I live there. I just see such potential that can happen there, and I just want you guys to see stand behind us, and we stand behind you, and move forward and promote the businesses that are there and attract new businesses for growth, for more jobs. I mean, that's what I keep hearing is jobs, jobs, jobs. That's my heart on the airport.
I appreciate you guys being here and for your volunteering. You don't make very much money to do this, so just like us, they make a little bit more than you do, but a lot more. But appreciate what your service there, and obviously I know you're doing it with a good heart and intention that you want to make the airport better and Leesburg better. So I appreciate your volunteering and the ideas that you have, and I want you to feel that you can come to me or to any of the commissioners or Al to be able to share those ideas and we work together. So and I'm glad to hear you're real positive about what you want to do there too. So whatever we can do.
Well, I think Leesburg is a nice little airport. I fly into a lot of small airports, and in this area, it's of course it's my favorite because this is where I'm based. But it's there's a lot to be said for it, and it's easy in, easy out. The services that are here. The FBO is one of the best FBOs in Central Florida. For small airplanes. I mean, you've got the big Atlantics and the Signatures at the big airports, for private. But Brian and his crew do a great job there, and it's always been even before I lived up here. It was fun to come in here, so it's a good airport.
Thank you. Thanks for serving. Anything else, Al?
No, just to recap, I think everybody's on the same page. Apologies for my diatribe earlier. But I mean, T hangers, just to recap, those 2 lots, 26 and 17, I know Tracy's were trying to market that, trying to get highest and best dollar for that. If it ends up in T hangers, I think that's good. If it doesn't, we'll adjust that. We're in the process of addressing minimum standards. Tracy and I will have a proposal back and we'll review it with the airport board at their next meeting. They'll be making a recommendation to you. In addition to the lot issues they talked about, there's also the fuel issue and the advertisements on the truck issue. I do think the commission needs to readdress that approach, and the airport board and the staff will have a recommendation to you probably in another month or so. And then as far as the economic development standards, I think everybody is on the same page there. So,
Not to sound outside the box or anything, but this could be long-term. What about the airport setting aside some money to start clearing the area behind Lowe's and possibly use that as growth?
I think that's something we should look at as we do the master plan.
Good, okay.
And I
because
think
that would be a lot of extra property.
I think in the south side as well.
Right, right. Okay, good.
Well, I'll speak my last piece to you guys, give you, since you 3 are new and haven't had me. The 2 points I have, one would go to lend to the master plan. One of the things that I think each one of us commissioners do is reach out to our representative who's on the board, because we feel like you have knowledge, input, connections, so rather than you sitting on the board, I think we're looking at it backwards, asking us what the master plan is. Really, it would behoove us if you guys met with your board and the other airport people who have places out there that have leases, and put together an idea of what you think are some things that could work there. And then when we as a commission sit down, obviously some of them may work, some of them may not work, or we may not all agree on it, but that would be something that we could base off of, well, here's 30 things, let's find 6 that we all can agree on and start working on in the next several years, and help us lay out our plan, opposed to some of us who maybe are not in aviation and don't understand it. So if you could do that, that would be great before our master plan session. My second thing is my frustration with the airport board since I've been on the commission has been the conflict between the commission and the airport. And my 2 cents on the issues have been, each one of us select you guys to represent us. You represent the people at the airport, and you get ideas, and you sit down and you discuss it with them. In a perfect setting, you and us are all on the same page, and we go forward. The issue becomes is when your board and our board doesn't agree, and then it becomes this headbutting. And really what it's supposed to be is when your board brings us ideas and says, this is what we think, this is what we approve, we don't approve, and we overturn it or do it or don't do it, then it becomes your job, in my opinion, to push that and sell that to the airport constituents, because that's that's the only reason you're there. Because if there's been several times I've almost brought to the commission just to do away with the airport advisory board, because you guys are there to help us, and if I'm not getting any help, I'm just having to have more meetings and have bigger fights instead of littler fights I can have, then there's no help from the airport advisory board. So instead of taking the role of I just got to sell what the airport guys want, you got to look at it through both, because you're the guy that represents me, And our issue is the airport's just one small facet of the city. It really is. So we don't lend to 60 hangars or 80 leases. We have 23,000 people and 500 employees and $150 million budget. So the airport's a portion of just one little thing that each one of us has to deal with. And so for me, getting it where it was not operating in the negative, each year pulling money out to fund it, that's a big deal. Helping with our master plan for the city and for Lake County and developing jobs and economic development, doing things out there to help bring up quality of life, such as the air shows or things like that would be there. Public safety aspects, those are the things that we have to look at on any issue we talk about, whether it's electric or the fire department or water, it just doesn't matter. We push that same venue for every department, every aspect of the city. So, if you can understand, sometimes we're going to agree with what you bring us, sometimes we're not, and when we don't, we need you to understand our side and say, hey guys, on the bigger picture, here's what we're going to have to work with, and find another way, opposed to doing back channels and creating havoc. So I'm glad you guys are on there. I think you got a good board right now, and I'd like to see it working, in harmony with you guys, and see what we can keep making as far as good strides forward.
Mr. Kristen, you get?
Well, to Mr. Barber, thank you for serving. I've been on the commission since 2004, so probably longer than everybody else. So I've seen the up and downs of the airport advisory board. I've seen the airport go towards a commercial terminal passenger. We got to put more asphalt so it can handle the big jets. We went through that for 2 or 3 years. We went from Emerald Riddle coming in and being our consultant to make the airport a job created, and we're going to tie into 470. Seeing the airport advisory board come and say, well, how much money do we make? Let's do our own enterprise fund. When many of the commissioners came on, so let's do our own enterprise fund. They forgot to say that the general fund already indebted like $3-4 million. So then came the wheelchair and the seaplane ramp. And then court didn't have enough money and had to borrow $1 million. So my only thing is when we're sitting there making these plans, I don't want anybody to think that the city council hadn't been supportive of the airport. We've been over supportive with many ideas trying to make the airport a Class A airport, providing jobs, all kind of ideas. As Commissioner Hurley alluded to, we've been there. supportive, very supportive of the airport. I believe. I think Mr. Roten said was you got 70 people waiting to be a hangar. If I was in business, if I had 70 people waiting to do something, I'm gonna find a way to get that money from those 70 people. Or we said we had Marina got 70 people waiting, maybe our prices are too low, that we got too many people. So I think when we talking about plans, are we really looking at the budget? How do we make money? How do we make sure that the airport can do some of these things as opposed to with FDOT and FAA that would usually come to match? So for me, it'll be, if we're gonna lure businesses, let's take a business approach. So we got vacant land, we got to clear. And, you know, we've been talking about a seaplane ramp for a while, and I'm sure it takes a long time to get to DEP and all the other things, but I don't think it should sit. So if I got 70 people waiting to be a T-hanger, if I got to go knock some trees down and build some T-hangers, but you got a consultant that'll come in, a construction guy, I think that's something I would like to see, is let the guy go out there and tell him what he can and cannot do. If he can't do it, let's not talk about it. If he can do it, let's put that in our short-term goal and make some money. So, and it goes to the airport, you probably got 23,000 people, probably less than 1% even use the airport. So from that standpoint, you got to think from my standpoint, and I would like to see more people at the airport. I would like to see the airport become a place where everyone can feel I can go, not that it's got this big old wall that you can't enter unless you got a jet, because as a taxpayer, I'm paying for it. So I would like to see us open the airport up to citizens that can come in, whether it be just to come and tour the airport, or we have shows and don't have to block the runway, but let people from Leesburg be able to come on the airport and see what's happening. And maybe they'll be more apt to support more if they give them some more money. But I just think it's always been adversarial. I first got on the commission. Just being the airport, that was probably my second meeting. Just being the airport advisory board. And I think, you know, your role is advise us. I'm not an aviation guy. But I like to hear what your ideas are, you know, from the T-hangers to the industrial goals. I've heard them all. I heard everything from bringing in JetBlue, and they're going to fly commercial. We heard the restaurant 2 years ago. We had a concept of putting a restaurant out there. We've heard it. You know, we've heard it all. We've tried a whole lot of things to make the airport, you know, pop. So I think we've been willing to try a whole lot of stuff. Some stuff worked, some stuff didn't work. But, you know, my thing is I got an open mind. I want to hear what the experts say should be at the airport. But I think working with our staff, with Trace and Al, for me, is going to be the easiest way to get things done. And I read the minutes, and your last couple of minutes were very long. I'm glad I wasn't there. Very, very long. So I feel sorry for those who have to stay. Who typing? You still typing the minutes? Yeah, I feel sorry for you. Hopefully Al comes. I know it's long because I know Al's going to talk. So I do pray for you at your airport meetings that they're not as long in the future. But please bring innovative ideas. I think that's what I like to see at airport, do something innovative and creative.
Commissioner Roebuck?
Thank you guys for your interest, and I do think we have a lot of great stuff going out there. And I mentioned this to Tracy. While one, I'm not sold on the T-hangers. I'm open to the idea, not completely sold there. If we do go that way, I'd want to see the city maintain ownership, because the payback period on those things is so fast. It's not an economic thing for me. I can get it. It's a good, you know, quick payoff and makes money. But just from the broader picture, is that the best long-term use? But if it is, you know, the 70, I think that list is probably more like 30 in terms of people that actually are going to go through, because I know Tracy has to call a few people every time a slot opens up. And so what I want to see is if it's going to take us, you know, $300,000 to build 30 T-hangers, you know, the first 30 people that want to put up a $10,000 deposit to help us fund construction, we credit towards rent, then they get a spot. Also ensure that we get people that are serious before we build these things, because I think a lot of people will say, yeah, I want that, it's, you know, $250 a month, I can do that, and then you break ground and it's, oh, well, I don't even have a plane yet, or, you know how those things go. So if we do it, for me, I'd want to see the future tenants fund a large portion of it and it stay under city ownership, so we can keep collecting that rent.
I'm gonna be real disappointed if I waited 3 years for nothing.
You're on the list again, aren't you?
If I might have to, yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't take 60 seconds of our time to thank you as a member of the Experimental Aircraft Association for the T-hangar that you've let us have for a 5-year period. And as Oshkosh, you've all heard of that, is the Experimental Aircraft Association. The Sun and Fun is the Experimental Aircraft Association. So the EAA Chapter 534 at Leesburg Airport, we have that little, I call it a clubhouse. It's our hangar. And we, for example, on the 22nd, I will be doing a one-day Boy Scout Aviation Merit Badge class. So that exposes the community to the airport. We fly young Eagles, a couple hundred a year, 15, 20, 25 at a day, where our pilots come in and voluntarily use their equipment, their fuel, and fly people, exposing us as the city of Leesburg again. And we make sure that they know that the city of Leesburg is our mentor, is our benefactor for our chapter. And so we work real hard to give Leesburg a good face to the public that come and take advantage of our program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Howard?
Yeah, I would like a couple minutes to say something.
Oh, actually, we started with you. I thought you had done yours, so that's why we went that way. So, yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
you've gotten a couple good ideas tonight. The idea about, kind of like pre-selling spots on the T-hangers. If something like that would work, that's excellent. If it needs to be one of the other companies just to get this thing growing, let's listen to everything. As far as clearing the land, I still would like us to look into that to see what it would cost to clear the property behind Lowe's. Because there's acres there and it's high ground. We wouldn't have to worry about lake and things sinking and everything else. I think you realize we've got an extremely strong airport advisory board this year. They want to succeed. They want the airport to succeed. So I think you're going to find that working with the commissioners, you're going to see, it's much more open. It's your ideas and thoughts are welcome. So I think, if you have problems, please let us know. But I think by working together, we can really make that something. And I know we didn't talk about cleaning up the airport, but to make it more visible and cleaned up and at least know that road that you can't see anything, that's the main entrance, not the one with the sign. I think we can really help things out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the cleanup note, I'd be remiss not to add, because that came up at a commission meeting, the dirt piles, and I think I didn't get back to all the commission. I think I got back to a couple of you. Most of the dirt piles that are out there now are actually being stockpiled for the seaplane ramp. So hopefully in a couple of months, those will all be gone. That's saving us some considerable money for clean fill. But also, we do need to be looking at CIP, the entrance, and rechanging those things around. So those things are to come.
All right. I have nothing further.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. We're adjourned. Thank you, guys.